Hello everyone and welcome back to my opinion. I'm very sorry for the long layoff between this video and my last video. I had a bit of a cold and I still kind of have a cold now. So when I was talking, I kind of was coughing a lot, so I couldn't really talk fluently. And also the intro and other things didn't really come the way that I wanted it to, so I was a bit dissatisfied. But as always, thank you for the support on the previous two videos, and I hope that I can upload more frequently and make sure this layoff doesn't happen again, and at least try to. And yeah, I hope that I can continue to post content that you will enjoy from both sports. So the IPL has started. Match 7 has just been completed today, and it was between the Chennai Super Kings and the Delhi Capitals. I will be doing videos on the other matches as well, so again, yeah, stay tuned for that, I guess. So today was, if you were a Delhi Capitals fan, today was a great game because, you know, on a pitch that wasn't exactly great for batting, you know, the total of 175 was a very good one, and the bowlers were brilliant. I mean, Avesh Khan's none for 42 doesn't exactly show how he was bowling. I thought his inexperience showed sometimes, but again, you know, he did beat the bat a few times, and I thought he was okay. I thought he was decent. I think he's still young and he can work from that. The others, especially Nokia, I thought was absolutely brilliant. The spinners, Akshar Patel and Amit Mishra were brilliant, and of course, there's Rabada, who has the purple cap again. And yeah. However, I support the Chennai Super Kings, and especially the last 20 overs was painful. I mean, to say the least. This is 2 games in a row where we didn't really even try to chase down the target that was presented to us. So how did this game go? So Delhi batted first, and the power play was a bit quiet. Prithvi Shaw placed some very nice drives off Deepak Chahar for 4, and again, he should have been out caught behind, but he was very smart about concealing that he had nicked it, and again, no one else heard the nick, so it was fine. I think it was on 8 runs at the time. He went on to score a brilliant 64-43. It was a truly fantastic innings. The power play was a bit quiet. It was only 35 without loss in 6 overs. And Shikhar Dhawan had hardly any of the strike. I think so. The next over, so after the power play ended, Ravindra Jadeja came on, and this was a time where Shikhar Dhawan thought he could just catch up, and catch up he did, because the first ball I think Jadeja bowled, it was in the slot, turning in because of the left arm off spinner to the left-hander, and he just slog swept it for 6 basically. And, you know, I think that even today, Jadeja gave 44 runs in 4 overs. And it's kind of showed that in all the 3 games that he's bowled so far, he's just been firing it in. And, you know, the batsmen have been hitting him for 6s. And the thing is that it's just been the same approach. Nothing has changed in these 3 games. And I think on commentary, they brought up this point that he doesn't have the confidence to bowl it slower, and he just seems to be a bit afraid because everyone's hitting him around. I mean, then again, I still don't understand this whole concept. I understand he likes to bowl fast, he likes to bowl it quicker usually, but he's just getting hit around and it's almost nothing's happening. And I think they would want to get, the CSK management would want to get more out of Jadeja soon. So yeah, that happened, and after that point, there was an acceleration, and the opening partnership actually lasted until 94 in 11 overs. And I think that by the way it was going, it was just, despite the CSK bowlers were bowling, you know, the Hazelwood and stuff were bowling well, there was not really any penetration, and I think that both of those batsmen, Prithvi Shaw and Shikhar Dhawan, just said, look, we're up to the task with whatever you bowl, And we've set the platform now, and now we're going to accelerate and make sure we get a good total. So Shikhar Dhawan got out. I mean, then again, it's a shot that he gets out playing really fairly often, which is the sweep / reverse sweep. This time it was a reverse sweep. I think it was the right idea. He was looking for runs because they had scored 94 runs in 11 overs. So I guess he wanted to try something. I still think that, like Kevin Peterson said in commentary, and we've seen a lot of times, that when he plays the sweep / especially the reverse sweep, I mean, it doesn't seem like he really practices it very much, so it just looks really awkward. And yeah, it was LBW. It was a bit of an ugly dismissal to look at, actually. It was very puzzling. But yeah, he played very well. He scored 35 off 27 balls. And then Rishabh Pant came in. So yeah, so they both, Rishabh Pant and Prithvi Shaw, were batting, and then Prithvi Shaw got out. And Shreyas Iyer came in. So I think that at this point, Rishabh Pant and Shreyas Iyer didn't really have much time to get in. And again, as I said, the pitch was slowing up. And especially if you saw the second innings, that it was much harder to bat than the first innings. And so I think it was a bit of... actually, after the 10th over, there wasn't a single six hit, and there were very few boundaries as well. And so I think that if you look at this total 175, even that was achieved because Marcus Stoinis then came in and then played a few shots off Josh Hazlewood in the last over. And also, I think the one where there was also an occasion where Sam Curran, he was bowling, and then he tried to chuck it back at the stumps and it went for overthrows. And also MS Dhoni missed one. There was sort of a wide Yorkerish delivery. It went for 4 byes. I think runs like those kind of also boosted the total up. So despite the fact that Delhi showed that they could handle this attack pretty easily, really, I think that because of the conditions and also towards the end, the application from the Chennai bowlers was good. We saw Sam Curran and Josh Hazlewood, I thought, were very good today. You know, it was hard. It was kind of a bit uniform. It was a pretty uniform progression to get to 175. So they would have thought, look, we were 94 without loss in 11 overs. In India, we've only got 175 for 3. But however, you know, for this particular pitch, they got a pretty good score. And what followed afterwards is now just basically going to be all about CSK's problems. So Murali Vijay and Shane Watson came out to bat for CSK. The start was slow, like in the 2 previous games. I mean, in this game, they were only 10 without loss after the first 3 overs. And the first sign of aggression came from Shane Watson when Avesh Khan was bowling the 4th over, where he hit a 6 and the over went for 12 runs and the score was 22 without loss after 4 overs. So the first wicket a wicket fell eventually, and the first wicket to go not very long after that over was the wicket of Shane Watson. And Akshar Patel, who has a very good record against Shane Watson, was the one who claimed his wicket, and he was caught by Shimron Hetmyer at mid-wicket. And the catch was, I thought that the thing was that Shane Watson got a very good piece of it, and I thought the catch was very well judged because the ball was still kind of curving when it was just about to go into Shimron Hetmyer's hands. I mean, you could still see the ball was moving, and so he had to get his hands in the right place to take the catch and still be alert to where the ball was going. I thought it was a very well judged catch that wasn't easy by any means. So soon after Shane Watson got out, Murali Vijay also got out for 10 or 15 balls. Again, this, unfortunately for himself and the team, this was another case of him scoring not that many runs whilst taking up a decent amount of deliveries. And I mean, this is a chase of 176, so you still have to keep up with a run rate, a decent required run rate. So 10 off 15, and, you know, taking up those deliveries and not catching up at the end, just getting out, basically means nothing. And actually puts a burden on the batsmen that come after you. So that wasn't ideal. I thought Nokia deserved that wicket because he was bowling well, and there are quite a few players in the CSK team who are 35 or 35 and older, and the thing is that with this whole break due to the lockdown, they would be rustier than younger players who would have played more cricket before as well anyway. And one of the last things you'd want to face in this kind of scenario, let's say if you're 35 and older coming back and you're rusty, is decently quick bowling, around the mid to lower 140s, heavy length. It would just be really uncomfortable to face. And that's why I thought Nokia, knowing that Murali Vijay wanted to break out of the shackles, bowling that delivery, it was a very good piece of bowling. Also, after this, 2 wickets fell. So it was Shane Watson and Murali Vijay. And the 2 batsmen who were batting at the crease were Faf du Plessis and Ruturaj Gaikwad. Ruturaj Gaikwad got run out due to a miscommunication and the 3rd wicket fell. And also, Faf du Plessis wasn't really getting his timing. So at the end of 12 overs, CSK was 60 for 3. Now, you may be thinking why I went into the other innings in more detail, whereas in this I'm basically just narrating what happened. And that's because I quite frankly just don't know what to say. I mean, could you even call this a chase? I mean, you even saw, we were all just expecting something to happen. We thought, okay, it's a terrible situation at 60 for 3 in 12 overs. But then again, knowing CSK, this kind of chase, we've seen it so many times before, and we were kind of expecting some dramatic finish, even though the game was slipping away. But especially with the way that they finished it, inverted commas, finished it, because this was just honestly playing out the 20 overs more than anything. I mean, if there was no intent in the last game until the end, there was just no intent completely in this game. And I'm very confused what they were playing for. They were playing for net run rate, because quite frankly, when you're chasing 176, should you even really be... I understand they wouldn't have been thinking about net run rate, but the fact is that you shouldn't be once be playing for that, because look at what they got in the end. 131 for 7. If someone tried to really go for it and lost wickets, then you could kind of expect that score to come in the end. But they literally didn't show any intent and just strolled along to 131 for 7. Now that's just terrible. I mean, at that stage, you're not playing for anything. You're not playing for net run rate. You saw the very meek way they finished. And you're clearly weren't playing to win the game because there was no intent whatsoever. And here's the thing. You look at a few players in the CSK lineup and you compare with Shreyas Iyer. Shreyas Iyer, the reason why I think he's in such a good space in his life is because you see by the way he conducts himself and how he just muscles sixes off spinners, he takes his game so seriously. And I mean, I'm not saying the CSK players don't, but look, like Shreyas Iyer is much younger and he realizes that he has, a future ahead of him where he can be a mainstay in the Indian national team. And I started thinking, apart from Sam Curran and, Ambati Rayudu and Faf du Plessis still playing international cricket, and Ambati Rayudu having a point to prove after, basically saying he was retiring from cricket and then took a U-turn to play the IPL. And Sam Curran is still young, so obviously he'd be having big aspirations for his career. Apart from these 3 players and a few bowlers, there are players in the CSK team where I don't know what they're actually playing for. I mean, look at the way that CSK have actually lost these last 2 games. So the game against Rajasthan and this game. Now, alright, we may be thinking, okay, CSK will probably qualify. And I still think they will qualify. But what can you actually, with such a stale kind of... A lot of players in this team are very stale. And I always think that with older players, you can't really... Like now they can't even just say, alright, scrap what we're doing. Let's try and think of a different game plan. Because it wouldn't be very easy. Because the older players just wouldn't have that spark as the younger players do. You look at Delhi Capitals, for example, look at their batting lineup. It just, you can do something with that. You can tell them and you can try and change the game plan around and do something. With the old players, for example, Murali Vijay taking 10 of 15 balls, right? Like, what can you do with that? I mean, consistently doing that, playing those kind of things. 21 of 21 the last game, 10 of 15 this game. And it's really stale. And you saw in 2018 when this squad was picked, the core of this squad was picked. And you kind of thought, because, CSK and RR were returning. And for me, I thought 2018 was one of the best seasons ever just because of the whole reshuffling of teams. And emotion kind of played a part, which was, CSK have the big names, and who knows, MS Dhoni can still kind of do something to get this side through. And they won. Then in 2019, they got to the final, but, we began to see some cracks and we thought, okay, maybe they have to think about the future. And now in 2020, where there are no fans at the stadiums, and so the emotion has a large part of the emotion has gone just because, there are no fans at the stadium to cheer the teams on. And so it's a more realistic thinking this year. And one 4-letter word is just being played, the word rust. And I think that especially with older players, and you look at the older players that CSK have, I think that's a huge factor in people thinking how they would do, but they still thought Dhoni would be able to do something. But we're now seeing that it's much harder than that because there's just not any kind of spark. You look at there's only really Sam Curran. You look at how he's playing, and honestly, I think that when Dwayne Bravo comes back, they'll have a bit of a. Will they really be able to fit Dwayne Bravo in the side? Because you look at Hazelwood, I think you can get away with playing, bowlers who aren't death bowling specialists in these conditions, because I think in UAE, having a constant control on the game, even if you really don't pick wickets, can still bode well. You saw the innings of Delhi was a relatively uniform progression to 175, and 94 without loss to 175. You'd expect a team to kind of launch and go big, but in this case, the conditions were also tough as well. So in these conditions, you can get away with playing Hazelwood, honestly. So I don't really think that you would need Dwayne Bravo to be in the side. And also, another player who was 35 and older probably wouldn't help things, to be really honest. But it's something CSK have to think about. And I also think that from 2019 and more so in this year, you look at CSK last year lost 4 times to Mumbai Indians. And the reason why they lost to me was just because, look, cricket is such a relentless battle of skill. Batsman versus bowler. And I just think that quality wins. And you look at, for example, Bumrah bowling to MS Dhoni. MS Dhoni, all right, he's older now, you can understand, but he could not do anything against Bumrah. Anything. And, sorry. This is what I mean. And you look at Delhi as well. And the moment MS Dhoni comes in, they bowl him a short ball, it just pushes him back. It's not only him, it's other players as well. But it's just, with these younger players who are at the business end of their careers, just everything's happening for them. And they have so much quality that CSK are quite frankly just getting suppressed by the sheer quality of these players and also these teams. So you look at Mumbai and Delhi, especially those two teams, I quite frankly think that CSK beat Mumbai because CSK played well, but Mumbai were off colour. If Mumbai played even a bit better than they played, you would have seen a much more closer game, even though this was if you watch the game, a decently close game if you look at the required run rate, but CSK did it pretty easily in the end. Mumbai would have won this game for me if they had really got together and just given a very good performance. Mumbai would have beaten CSK for me. And this is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's just this whole strategy with old players. I understand with 2018, we were all kind of hyped about it. But it was still criticised, but because CSK came back, and in the end they won, so you couldn't really argue with anything. But ever since then, we've seen the weakness of it. And as I said with the Shreyas Iyer example, they kind of have to think about that. Who has that level of seriousness in their game, bar Tom Curran? I honestly can't see anyone in the batting department who has that, honestly. So, and you even look at the bowling, and I mean, Jadeja, this isn't about age, I'm just saying that Jadeja and Chawla both got hit, and Jadeja in the first, 3 games, he's been expensive and he's just been firing the balls in at, a high speed and just getting hit for sixes. And you saw Amit Mishra, he bowled it in actually the 70s in as far as KPH is concerned. Even Akshar Patel, who bowls very quick usually, slowed it down. It still wasn't slow, but he bowled slower than he usually bowled. And there was one particular example for Amit Mishra when Faf du Plessis tried to come down the track and Amit Mishra bowled a wrong un that drifted inwards and spun as well. So it got too close to Faf du Plessis, so he just couldn't free his arms and hit the ball through cover. The fact is that in the end, it's going to be, I say this in CSK, I still think will qualify, but it will be a very difficult road this year because you look at the players the other teams have got just in the business end, just really just firing, and they just, for me, have a higher motivation and they're playing more regularly. The lockdown just quite frankly hasn't helped CSK. And all right, Suresh Raina and Harbhajan Singh aren't there, but you look at Suresh Raina, I'm not saying we would have done badly, but you look at the fast bowling in this tournament, especially just prospering, and you look at Rabada, Nokia, Pat Cummins will come good, I think 100%, and I think everyone would think 100%. And you look at these kind of bowlers where pace is prospering, real fast bowling is prospering in this tournament. And that's why I'm struggling to think which teams Suresh Raina would have actually been comfortable playing against. So in that way, having someone either du Plessis or Raidu at 3 would mean that weakness wouldn't exactly be exposed. I know it seems a bit bad that I'm saying this, but in the end it is kind of true because in the past few seasons he's been more rigid against the fast bowlers than he usually would be. So coming back to Delhi, I think that they have a very good team this year, and as they did last year. And I think they're a bit more luckier this year because the tournament is being played in the UAE entirely rather than in India. So the 7 home games last year, you saw Delhi didn't really like playing in their home conditions, and quite understandably, it was quite frankly just a very slow, not too great of a track to bat on. And you saw teams went hard in the power play when they were playing in Delhi because of they knew that the next 14 overs would be very difficult to bat. But you look at this game, 35 without loss in 6 overs. And I know it's only one game, but they still got to 175 for 3, albeit a uniform progression towards the end, like I said earlier. But then, that means they could look to score higher and eventually score higher more in this tournament than last year. So because they just by the improved conditions in batting, notice I said improved because 2 out of the 3 grounds, it's still not easy to bat. And I think that teams, only play 3 games in Sharjah, mostly is what I've seen. So again, you can't really expect to have these batting friendly conditions and small boundaries in your plans all the time. But I think that this slight thing going, in Delhi's way is thoroughly deserved because we saw the performances last year. I thought it was great what they did last year. And they have the right mix, youth and experience. You have players who are younger players like Shreyas Iyer and Prithvi Shaw, and more experienced players who you can turn to like Shikhar Dhawan and Ravichandran Ashwin. So I think that it's just a very, very good team, and them and Mumbai, for me, those two are the title contenders, really. If you like, for me, those two are above everyone else. And I just think that if you compare this side to CSK, as I said before, it's just a simple case of, there are so many players in this side who are in the business end of their careers, and even the older players they just seem more rejuvenated than the ones that CSK have. I mean, you compare R. Ashwin to Murali Vijay, and you just see so much of a difference. I mean, it's just that there's one thing being on an experience in a cricket team is needed, but if you don't really conduct yourself in what you do in a kind of an you don't bring any energy to the team, then it kind of becomes a liability. And I think that CSK, not only do they have a lot of old players, they have players who don't bring an energy to the team. And that's what I think that, I think they bought short term, and they kind of acknowledged that in 2018 when Stephen Fleming said, I bought a team to win this tournament. I mean, and what he meant was that year. But, and again, now I think that they're going to have to look to who's going to play in the future. And I think that, honestly, I thought they could have done this was try out Sam Curran, the batsman, by batting him up the order and maybe saying, all right, don't go and try and hit around from the first ball. Just actually try and play like a middle order player so we can look to you in the future. But then again, that's just my opinion. So yeah, that's the thing with these two teams. One team on the ascendancy, 2 wins out of 2. Another team played 3. A good win against Mumbai, but 2 very confusing losses where they kind of they got outclassed and they didn't even try. So those 2 are a not very great combination. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And thanks for the support on the previous 2 videos. And remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?